What up, YouTube? Here with another episode of Talk Wrestling. On this episode, I'll be giving y'all my opinion on what's been going on in WWE. I was gonna say in all of pro wrestling, but I haven't been tapping in to pro wrestling overall. I've been watching WWE here and there, but I haven't had a lot of interest when it comes to pro wrestling since Royal Rumble and the road to WrestleMania. The only part that I found entertaining was The Rock when he had decided to take on the heel role and work with the Bloodline, and the storyline with the Usos, and CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, what they had going on has been entertaining as well, because I appreciate Drew McIntyre's heel work. And as far as the Cody Rhodes storyline goes, it's been building up from last year's Royal Rumble till WrestleMania a few weeks ago. And it's kind of overdid and overran, and it got dragged on from last year all the way till this year. And I'm kind of glad that it's over, because y'all know what happened at WrestleMania. It was last week when WrestleMania finished. And with that being said, that's why I haven't been talking about pro wrestling and putting out pro wrestling content on this channel. As y'all know, this channel, I talk mostly about boxing, and I'll talk about pro wrestling the most after boxing. When I put it in order, it goes like this: boxing, then wrestling, then I'll talk about other sports here and there when I find interest in other sports. If I find it where I declare it to be entertaining enough and I find it relevant enough from my perspective to talk about another topic, that's when I'll talk about that specific topic. And pro wrestling, as I have said, other than the topics that I found hot in WWE specifically, because I know what's going on in AEW as far as the main title scene goes with Samoa Joe and Swerve Strickland. Other than that, I don't know what's going on in AEW. I know Christian Cage's work has been incredible, and he's always been a top-notch heel from his days almost 20 years ago back in the WWE. And I know that him and Adam Copeland had a feud over the TNT title, and I know Chris Jericho has got a thing going on with Hook. And other than that, I haven't been tapping in to AEW at all. I'll be tapping into WWE here and there when I want to. And I checked out WrestleMania a few days ago, and overall, it was a good show. WrestleMania always lives up to its expectations, and WrestleMania 40 didn't disappoint. It was the build-up to WrestleMania 40 that I found to be cliche. And I'll be giving y'all my review on WrestleMania 40 in this episode of Talk Wrestling. And I don't know when the next episode of Talk Wrestling may be. I don't know if I'm going to be tapping into Backlash. I know the WWE has got this resurgence, this rejuvenating feel to the WWE after what took place at WrestleMania 40 last week. And here is my review for WrestleMania 40. I'll be going from day 1 to day 2. at day one, the opening contest, I might not have it all in order. I will give y'all my review for each and every match that happened on the card for WrestleMania 40. Now, the first match that I'll be giving y'all my review on was the tag team titles match, and it was competed under a ladder match. We had Awesome Truth win the Raw tag team titles, while Austin Theory and Grayson Waller won the SmackDown tag team titles. Now, if y'all saw Raw this past Monday, the WWE has announced that they had dropped the title of the Raw tag team titles. Instead, it will be now called the World tag team titles. And I'm sure for SmackDown today, because I don't know when this video will upload, but I'm recording this video on a Friday, and that means SmackDown will be aired today or tonight. And they will most likely announce that the SmackDown tag team titles will be rebranded as the WWE tag team titles. And they had, what's his name? Other than the winners, they had the champions, who was the undisputed tag team champions heading into this match, that being the Judgment Day, Damian Priest and Finn Balor. And the other competitors that was a part of this match was the New Day and DIY and New Catch Republic. And I know this wasn't the opening contest. This was, in fact, the follow-up to the opening contest. The opening contest for WrestleMania 40 Day 1 was for the Women's World title between Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch. But anyways, let me give y'all my thoughts on the six-pack ladder match for the tag team titles. As I had said, Awesome Truth won the World Tag Team titles, and Grayson Waller and Austin Theory won the WWE Tag Team titles. And it was Austin Theory and Grayson Waller that retrieved the first titles, and they did that by clearing out the ring from all the other teams that was trying to climb to the top of the ladder and retrieve at least one of the two tag team titles. And when they had cleared all the other competitors out of the way, that's when they were able to retrieve those SmackDown tag team titles. And then they didn't really get to celebrate all that much because there was a WrestleMania highlight reel moment there, and that was when Grayson Waller got thrown out of the ring when he was on the ladder and he snapped through. I believe it was a ladder that he snapped through that was placed from the announce table onto the apron of the ring, or it could have been a table. But there was other WrestleMania highlight reel moments as well when JD McDonough was interfering on the behalf of the Judgment Day. He got thrown onto a stack of a table that was outside of the ring when he was trying to climb the ladder, and as well as aerial spots being featured throughout this match when both Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate did their aerial maneuvers from the top of the ladder onto all the other competitors in the midst of the match outside of the ring. And I like how the tables were a part of this match as well, giving it that nostalgia feeling of when the Attitude Era had TLC matches going on for the tag team titles back in the days. And I know it wasn't officially a TLC match and it was announced to be a ladder match, but they had tables for spots in this match as well, and that added a exciting factor to this match. And Awesome Truth won the Raw tag team titles, and that's after the first tag team titles were retrieved by, as I had said, Austin Theory and Grayson Waller. And they couldn't compete for the Raw tag team titles because they got taken out after they captured the SmackDown tag team titles. And I will give this match a rating of a 3.5 out of a 5. And it had comedic elements as well. Of course, R-Truth being this Looney Tune of a character that's kind of crazy, and that's what makes R-Truth so unique. And him wrestling as if this was a normal tag team match, and him still trying to play off the fact that he is still trying to fit in with the Judgment Day was the comedic part of it. And that is always appreciated. And as far as R-Truth getting revenge on the Judgment Day by throwing them out and him climbing to the top of the ladder and retrieving the belts for both him and The Miz, for them to be declared the new Raw, well, now the new World Tag Team Champions, was a relieving factor, a feel-good moment for R-Truth and for what he has been working with as far as the program that he got into with him and the Judgment Day, and all that coming to a end at WrestleMania 40 this past week was a good way to close that chapter in that book of R-Truth's ongoing saga. And it had to been a good moment for R-Truth, because throughout R-Truth's long-time career, he's never had a victorious, legendary WrestleMania moment until WrestleMania 40 this past week. And that's why it was a good look. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the tag team division is gonna be able to produce. Now, the fact that there is two different tag team champions for each respective brand. And I've been saying this for quite a while now. Ever since the draft happened, there should have been a split with the undisputed tag team titles, and it happened this past WrestleMania 40. And with Awesome Truth being former tag team champions almost a decade ago, and they had a good run while they were feuding with Triple H when he took position as a corporate member of the WWE, and as well as John Cena and The Rock. And they had a relevant role almost a decade ago, or well over a decade ago. And now that they have reunited, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to be able to produce with them being tag team champions now that a decade has passed by. And now that they're baby faces and not heels, it's a refreshment for the WWE to have Awesome Truth as the tag team champions. And as far as Grayson Waller and Austin Theory goes, they were never a tag team before. Both wrestlers started out as singles competitors, and they became a tag team after they couldn't really figure out what to do for both individuals as far as the creative side goes for WWE. And their characters are somewhat alike because they're both arrogant and young and fresh and up and coming prospects. So it made sense for them to become a tag team, and they're well over with the crowd and with the individual works that they have produced in the past. Austin Theory being well accomplished, him being a former Money in the Bank briefcase holder, and that was a failed experiment. But him being a well-established United States champion, that is a good accomplishment to have under his resume. And Grayson Waller, he did his thing in NXT, and he's got a character that could make him out to be a successful star perhaps in the future. And when you put those two characters and developing wrestlers together, it calls for a successful tag team. And unlike Awesome Truth, that were a successful tag team over a decade ago, now Grayson Waller and Austin Theory being a new tag team, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can produce over there on SmackDown as the WWE Tag Team Champions. And I believe I heard from sources on wrestling websites that the WWE will be having a draft next week. Now, I don't know if Awesome Truth is going to stay on Raw and Grayson Waller and Austin Theory is going to stay on SmackDown. We just got to see what the results are going to be for this year's draft. Until then, they're still going to be tag team champions regardless of what brand they may end up in. Anyways, moving on to the next review. I'm going to be talking about the opening contest of WrestleMania 40 Day 1. That was Rhea Ripley defending her Women's World Title versus Becky Lynch. Now, I wasn't paying attention to the Women's World Title scene, and it's a good look for Becky Lynch to have a title shot at the biggest stage of them all, because she's been a household name at the top of the women's division for a long time, and it's been a while since Becky Lynch got to have a women's world title shot at a WrestleMania. I know it was SummerSlam of 2021, I believe, when she came back from her injury and defeated Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's title. And was it WrestleMania 38 where she wrestled Bianca Belair for the women's title, the Raw Women's title that was, and Bianca Belair defeated her and avenged her defeat that she suffered at SummerSlam of 2021. No, it could have been, no, it was WrestleMania 38 when Bianca Belair defeated Becky Lynch. I'm not sure as far as that being facts. If I'm wrong, correct me if that wasn't the case for WrestleMania 38, but I believe that's when Becky Lynch last was featured to compete for a women's title at a WrestleMania. And Rhea Ripley, she's been on the most successful run of her career ever since her joining the Judgment Day 2 years ago. And she became women's champion after defeating Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 39 last year. And she's been champion ever since. And she continues her reign after defeating Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 40 this year. And for Rhea Ripley to defeat Becky Lynch and her continuing her reign as Women's World Champion is a good look, because Becky Lynch, with the status that she has, and she has a status that she has because she's proved herself of being a top-notch level wrestler for a while now. And now that Rhea Ripley consecutively in back-to-back WrestleManias defeated Charlotte Flair last year, and now this year at WrestleMania 40 she defeats Becky Lynch. Now that those are two legendary women's wrestlers that helped revolutionize women's wrestling in the modern era, and that is a great look for Rhea Ripley, who's considered to be the best women's wrestler in not only the WWE but in all of pro wrestling. She's up there to be considered a top-notch level women's wrestler, if not the top women's wrestler when it comes to all of pro wrestling. And unfortunately, if y'all saw Raw this past Monday, we saw that Rhea Ripley, due to her injuries, had to vacate the Raw, not the Raw, it's not called the Raw Women's title anymore, the Women's World title. I believe she hurt her arm. I don't know which arm it was, but she's going to be on the injury reserve list. She's going to be on the shelf for a few months due to an injury. Now, I don't know the details to it, but it's unfortunate because who knows how long Rhea Ripley would have been Women's World Champion for. She had to vacate her title and it lasted over a year. Now, was she of had held the women's world title as long as Roman Reigns did for over 3 years? I don't know. But the fact that she had successfully defended the women's world title for over a year and her winning the women's title at last year's WrestleMania, and then a year later she successfully defends that women's title that she won at last year's WrestleMania at this year's WrestleMania is a impressive good look for Rhea Ripley's career. And I'm sure when she comes back, she's gonna be wanting to capture back what she never technically lost. And I don't know who would have been the right candidate to take that title from Rhea Ripley. Now, Becky Lynch, it was more like a passing of the torch as it was for Charlotte Flair when Charlotte Flair wrestled Rhea Ripley at last year's WrestleMania. It was a good look for Rhea Ripley to defeat Charlotte Flair and now to defeat Becky Lynch at 2 back-to-back consecutive WrestleManias in a row. And if Rhea Ripley were to be healthy, and depending on who would have got drafted to the same brand as Rhea Ripley, that's when I could have formed an opinion to say this is the right wrestler to successfully overthrow Rhea Ripley to become the Women's World Champion. Other than that, Rhea Ripley was the right winner, and it was somewhat predictable for Rhea Ripley to defeat Becky Lynch because of how it was lining up. Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch starting out at the same time to help revolutionize and rejuvenate women's wrestling. And then Rhea Ripley came onto the scene recently in these past few years and then had climbed to the cream of the crop and has been a women's champion that's been holding down the women's division. And for her to get a victory at WrestleMania, the grandest stage of them all, against Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, that's what it looked like the WWE was looking to do. And as far as this match goes, I'll give this match a 3 out of a 5 because this match was the right opening contest to get the fans involved with the pace of the rest of the show. It was a good tone setter, and Rhea Ripley coming out with a live band that gets the fans' enthusiasm and pumped up for the rest of the show, giving it that WrestleMania feel. And I'm giving it a 3 out of a 5. And if Becky Lynch were healthy, I'm sure they could have pulled off a better stylistical match. But Becky Lynch was battling a 102-degree fever. And for her to wrestle in those conditions and still pull off the match that she did versus Rhea Ripley, shout out to Becky Lynch for that. And moving on though, the next match on the card of WrestleMania 40 Day 1, we saw Rey Mysterio team up with Andrade to take on the team of Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. And I'll give this match a rating of a 2.5 out of a 5. This was more like a spot filler of a match, and it didn't have that much of a storyline featured for this match other than the Judgment Day trying to recruit Andrade and Dominic Mysterio being a part of the Judgment Day, and that plays into the storyline factor and how that aligns. And Santos Escobar being a former member of the LWO and being the former protege of Rey Mysterio while he was a member of the LWO, and him turning on Rey Mysterio and forming his, well, not new group, but reforming his old group before Legado del Fantasma turned to the LWO, and him joining with Humberto and Angel and Elektra to reform the new Legado del Fantasma to go against LWO, consisting of Rey Mysterio, Carlito, and Joaquin Cruz, and El Toro, and Zelina Vega. And I don't know if Dragon Lee is a part of the LWO, but he is. Dragon Lee was announced to be a part of the LWO when he replaced, I don't know who it was. He was replaced by Andrade because Legado del Fantasma put Dragon Lee on the injury list after they attacked Dragon Lee, and that's why Andrade stepped up to fill Dragon Lee's place for this tag team match. And people was expecting Carlito to team with Rey Mysterio to take on Dominic Mysterio and Santos Escobar, but he didn't. He was managing Rey Mysterio and Andrade with the rest of the LWO ringside to help support his LWO members, just as Legado del Fantasma was accompanying Dominic Mysterio and Santos Escobar for this tag team match. And Rey Mysterio and Andrade got the win as expected, and those supporting team members for each respective team ringside had their Wrestlemania moments as well by brawling with each other outside of the ring, and that sums up what happened for that match. Anyways, the next match we saw was brother versus brother, twin versus twin. This was the first ever WrestleMania match where we saw twins wrestling with one another. And this has been long built because Jey Uso, when he wrestled Roman Reigns for the Universal title at SummerSlam, Jimmy Uso costed Jey Uso that win for the undisputed Universal title when Jimmy Uso was the one back at Night of Champions last year when he decided to kick Roman Reigns in the face and cost Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa a possible win at the tag team titles when they were in there with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And Jey Uso didn't decide to turn on Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa and start that in-house feud amongst the bloodline. It was Jimmy Uso that made that decision to pull that trigger on the head of the table. And then they had their tag team match at Money in the Bank where Jimmy and Jay defeated Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa, and that's what led to Jey Uso challenging Roman Reigns at SummerSlam for the Universal title. And Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns took out Jimmy Uso to make sure Jimmy Uso couldn't accompany Jey Uso for that match at SummerSlam. And then we saw at SummerSlam Jimmy Uso turned on Jey Uso and cost him that title win that Jey Uso had in his grasp for the Universal Undisputed title. And Jimmy Uso explained to Jey Uso as to why he cost Jey Uso that win that Jey Uso had at SummerSlam, where if Jimmy Uso wouldn't have interfered, Jey Uso would have became the new Undisputed Universal Champion, he said because he didn't want the Usos to split. But that wasn't a good enough excuse for Jey Uso. It was like Jimmy Uso couldn't let his brother go and live up to his full potential. And that's why Jey Uso quit, and then he went on his own to Monday Night Raw. And Jimmy Uso, he rejoined the bloodline and went to become a heel and was once again side by side with Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa, reforming the bloodline without Jey Uso over there on SmackDown. But he just couldn't let go of Jey being separate from him. And Jimmy and Jey, they hinted that they were going to have a match at WrestleMania dating back to Money in the Bank of last year. Well, SummerSlam should have been a giveaway to them possibly having a feud or a match that lead to WrestleMania. And it did happen at WrestleMania 40, where for the first time ever we saw twins compete against one another. And that was when Ariel Helwani was interviewing both the Usos, and they said they achieved their dream by main eventing WrestleMania last year when they defended their tag team titles versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And they accomplished that goal of theirs of main eventing WrestleMania as a tag team. And now that they're no longer a tag team, they did tell Ariel Helwani that they wanted to compete against one another at a WrestleMania, and that dream came true at WrestleMania this year. And Jey Uso defeated Jimmy Uso because Jey Uso has been putting in more work as a singles competitor, and he's more over with the crowd and has more experience at competing as an individual rather than a tag team competitor. And Jimmy Uso, as of recently, has been showing his own charisma and character as a non-tag team competitor. He's more jokey and he's more comedic than Jey is. Jey is comedic and charismatic and very involved with the crowd as well. But there's a different finesse to Jimmy and Jey. Jimmy, he antagonizes the crowd, but is funny while doing it. Jey is more involved with the crowd on a more hosty kind of way. He's more having fun with the crowd than to be funny with the crowd. And that's the difference with the twins. And as I had said, they hinted that from that interview with Ariel Helwani outside of the WWE, and then at SummerSlam, and then at Royal Rumble when they were the number 1 and 2 entrants to this year's Royal Rumble. And then it kind of solidified and stamped that they were going to have a match at this year's WrestleMania when Jimmy yet again costed Jey Uso another opportunity at becoming a singles champion when Jey had Gunther pinned to become the new Intercontinental Champion, but Jimmy costed him yet another title win, and that's what led to this match. And Jey got the win, as I had said, and this was a good storytelling match, and Jimmy doing that underhanded, cheating, heel work of him looking like he's begging for mercy from his brother Jey, and him realizing that he was wrong and him apologizing, and Jey showing that kindness that sympathy, that understanding, and him trying to help his twin get back up on his feet. But then Jimmy, as I had said, being the heel that he is, would finagle and trick Jey Uso and take advantage of his understanding and his empathy by hitting Jey Uso with that super kick and then hitting him with the splash, but Jey would kick out and then Jey would turn it around on Jimmy and hit the super kick on Jimmy and hit the splash on Jimmy to secure the win. And I'll give this match a rating of a 3 out of a 5. Then the next match we saw was a 6-women's tag team match with Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, and Naomi taking on Damage Control. And much like the Santos Escobar, Dominic Mysterio versus Rey Mysterio and Andrade, this was a spot filler match that we saw with these two teams. And much like those wrestlers was deserving of a Wrestlemania match, these females were deserving of a Wrestlemania match as well. Kabuki Warriors being tag team champions and Damage Control being one of the most important stables in the WWE when it comes to the women's department. And Jade Cargill and Naomi both have just recently made their comeback to the WWE. And well, Naomi, she came back to the WWE after she was wrestling with Impact, after she decided to leave the WWE after WrestleMania 38, and she came back at this year's Royal Rumble. Jade Cargill, on the other hand, she made her debut with the WWE at this year's Royal Rumble after making her impact in AEW. And with Naomi being a veteran in the WWE or in pro wrestling overall, and Jade Cargill, her being a superstar of her stature, and Bianca Belair being a household name for as long as she has been, she's deserving. That's why all 6 competitors that was involved in this match was deserving of a WrestleMania match. And this match was a cliche match. I'll give this match a rating of a 2.5 out of a 5. And Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, and Naomi got the win over on Damage Control. And as y'all know, Damage Control has been running rampant, running things over there on SmackDown, with not only the Kabuki Warriors now being the tag team champions, they've been that for a few months now, and Io Sky, after successfully cashing in her Money in the Bank briefcase, became the WWE Women's Champion at SummerSlam, and she's had a long, healthy reign as the WWE Women's Champion. And that's how Damage Control has been running things over there on SmackDown, because they had all the gold. And they've been giving hell to not only Bianca Belair, but all those that became foes to Damage Control. And it wasn't until recently where Naomi and Jade Cargill decided to help aid Bianca Belair in combating Damage Control that was running rampant all over all the females roster that wasn't a part of the Damage Control. So it was like revenge for Bianca Belair and the rest of the SmackDown women's locker room to have Jade Cargill, Naomi, and Bianca Belair to defeat Damage Control at WrestleMania. And from the looks of it, it looks like Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair still have an alliance, and they're teaming with one another, and it looks like they're going to be aiming at the Kabuki Warriors to get a shot. If they can defeat the Kabuki Warriors, they can possibly become the new women's tag team champions. And as far as Naomi goes, she's still a baby face. I don't know if she's going to be challenging Bayley for the women's title, because Bayley did defeat Io Scott for the women's title at day 2 of WrestleMania 40. And Bayley was the Royal Rumble winner for this year. And it was at a record-breaking Royal Rumble win for Bayley at this year's Royal Rumble, and she's a new women's champion. And Naomi, I'm talking about, she defeated Tiffany Stratton to put herself in position to challenge Bayley for the women's title sometime in the future. And Naomi is still a babyface now. I don't know if she's gonna help Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair still. I'm sure that babyface alliance is still there intact to help combat Damage Control. If Damage Control tries to bully Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, and the rest of the SmackDown women's locker room. But that's how the women's scene is looking right now as far as Damage Control and Jade Cargill, Naomi, and Bianca Belair goes. And the next match on the card we saw was for the Intercontinental title. Gunther defending his Intercontinental title versus Sami Zayn. And Sami Zayn got the win, ending the historic title reign of Gunther. Gunther is the longest reigning Intercontinental champion of all time. And that ended in 666 days. And Sami Zayn is the man to end that streak of Gunther. Gunther, shout out to him for having that long, successful, historic reign as the longest reigning Intercontinental champion of all time. And that already cements his legacy as legendary. And the match itself was a good match. I would say it was one of the best matches featured at this year's WrestleMania. And I would say that it was one of the highlight reel moments in WrestleMania 40. And Sami Zayn, for him to get the win and for him to have that singles moment, he had his WrestleMania moment at last year's WrestleMania at the main event of day 1 of WrestleMania 39, when him and Kevin Owens, longtime friends, both came up together in the independent circuit of pro wrestling before they signed with the WWE, and them becoming tag team champions, defeating the Usos, one of the greatest tag team champions in pro wrestling history. And now for Sami Zayn to get his WrestleMania moment as a singles wrestler, it is that true underdog come up feeling. And for him to do that versus Gunther, the longest reigning Intercontinental champion of all time, makes it even more of a feel-good highlight reel moment. And this is a good look. I'm looking forward to seeing what Sami Zayn can do as a babyface Intercontinental champion. He's had a prior Intercontinental title reign before, but not with the momentum that he has built for himself in the current stages. And I'll give this match a rating of a 4 out of a 5. And then the main event to WrestleMania 40 Day 1, we saw the Bloodline consisting of Roman Reigns, the undisputed Universal Champion, and the final boss, The Rock, taking on the team of the World Heavyweight Champions, Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. And this tag team match was supposed to be a regular tag team match, but with The Rock being a member of the board of directors, he got to bend the rules at his will. And when the referee was trying to officiate the match as fair as possible, The Rock was threatening him of firing the referee, just having The Rock to use weapons and having rules be in the favor of the Bloodline. And The Rock telling the referee he couldn't count and he couldn't do his job, and him putting his hands on the referee and all that. Great work of The Rock being a great worker that he is, and The Rock being a heel this time, which we haven't seen since 2003. That was the last time when we saw The Rock do his heel work. And me personally, I like The Rock as a heel more than I like him as a babyface. Don't get me wrong, he does great work as babyface and as a heel. But me personally speaking, I like his work as the villain better. And he displayed that villain character to its fullest potential during this run leading up to WrestleMania and at WrestleMania this past week as well. Or not this past week, last week. And The Rock and Roman Reigns got the win. And they did that in typical bloodline fashion. And that match and the result of that match would determine the stipulations for the main event at day 2 of WrestleMania 40. And because the Bloodline had won the main event of day 1 at WrestleMania 40, the main event for day 2 at WrestleMania 40 would be contested under Bloodline rules. And when Cody Rhodes looked like he had the match won, when he was trying to hit multiple crossroads on Roman Reigns, The Rock from outside of the ring would whip Cody Rhodes in the back with his belt, and that's what got Roman Reigns out of the crossroads position, and Roman Reigns would hit a spear on Cody Rhodes, and then The Rock would ask Roman Reigns to tag him in for The Rock to finish the job and get the win over on Cody Rhodes, which he successfully did. And Seth Rollins was nowhere to be found to save the night for Cody Rhodes because Roman Reigns has speared Seth Rollins through the barricade. And this match had chaotic elements to it. We saw Cody Rhodes hit the rock bottom on The Rock through the announce table. We saw the prime bottles being used throughout the match, and we saw Roman Reigns on accident spear The Rock, and The Rock selling the ish out of Roman Reigns' spear that he hit on him. And I'll give this match a rating of a 4 out of a 5. Now let's go on to talk about day 2 of WrestleMania 40. For the opening contest to day 2 of WrestleMania 40, we saw the World Heavyweight title being defended by Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre, and CM Punk was at the announce table doing announcing duties, doing play-by-play commentary. And this match was the right opening contest because Seth Rollins and the status that he has as the World Heavyweight Champion, and he's been the workhorse champion for all of WWE. Ever since he became a singles competitor after he stepped away from the Shield, and him being the World Heavyweight Champion, he made that title have prestige. And there hasn't been no other World Heavyweight Champions ever since the WWE decided to announce a second world title. And I don't want to call it a second world title because the World Heavyweight title is the title for the Raw brand. And Seth Rollins was the right champion to give meaning to that title. And Drew McIntyre, who became WWE champion at WrestleMania 36 when he defeated Brock Lesnar during the pandemic where there wasn't a live audience, he only had his highlight reel moment when he won the Royal Rumble in 2020. And ever since then, he's been chasing that career defining moment. He tried to do that when he faced Bobby Lashley for the WWE title at WrestleMania 37, unsuccessful. He tried to have that moment versus Roman Reigns at Clash at the Castle, unsuccessful. And then that frustration is what led to Drew McIntyre becoming heel. And Drew McIntyre and his heel work has been subpar. And I would say it's been one of the best works produced by the WWE. And him getting a win over on Seth Rollins at WrestleMania last week was a good look. He got to have that career-defining moment finally. And he did that in not that much time. And the only highlight reel moment that I can say that was produced out of this match was when, right off the sound of the bell, Drew McIntyre would hit Seth Rollins with the Claymore. Seth Rollins would kick out. And also Seth Rollins hitting the pedigree outside of the ring. And Drew McIntyre got the win after he hit yet another Claymore to end the match. And this match was mediocre at best, but the right match for it to be the opening contest to this pay-per-view show, because it gets the crowd anticipation to be up there for the rest of the show. And there's no other matches that was left for day 2 of WrestleMania 40 to be the pacemaker for the rest of the show. And with the status that both Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre has, and the title that was on the line for that match, is why that was the appropriate opening contest for WrestleMania 40 Day 2. And I'll give this match itself a rating of a 2.5 out of a 5. And Drew McIntyre, being a man of his words, he got to rub his title win to the face of CM Punk. And he got to brag about him finally having that live audience title win moment. And he got to celebrate that by provoking CM Punk, who was doing play-by-play commentary duties ringside. And when Drew McIntyre got overtly disrespectful by telling CM Punk to suck it right in front of his face, and when Drew McIntyre thought that he could just walk away, CM Punk would sweep him by under his feet, and then CM Punk would follow that up with hitting Drew McIntyre with his cast that was supporting his injured arm, and then would continue that assault by stomping on the face of Drew McIntyre. And then here comes Senor Mr. Money in the Bank, Damian Priest, to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase to become the new World Heavyweight Champion. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Damian Priest can do as the World Heavyweight Champion. Now, we know that Jey Uso is the number 1 contender to compete next in line for Damian Priest's World Heavyweight title. And this is going to build the feud with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. And this happening at WrestleMania 40 is going to add to that frustrated character that Drew McIntyre has got going on right now. It's going to add more fuel to that fire, to that character, as well as adding the fuel to the fire to the feud that CM Punk and Drew McIntyre has got going on. And if y'all saw Raw after WrestleMania, CM Punk yet again costed Drew McIntyre a redemption shot at reclaiming that World Heavyweight title that he lost at WrestleMania 40 during the number 1 contenders match. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they're gonna do with Drew McIntyre and what works that they're gonna have for Drew McIntyre. We don't know exactly when CM Punk is gonna be able to compete again, and when CM Punk is healthy, he's obviously gonna get into a feud with Drew McIntyre where they can have an actual match. And as I have said, Drew McIntyre with the heel works that he's got going on right now, I don't know who they're gonna have him go against next. Are they gonna have Drew McIntyre continuously complain about CM Punk and him spazzing out about him being screwed over the world title in this WrestleMania moment? Is he gonna feud for the Intercontinental title versus Sami Zayn? Is he gonna? Well, that's not looking like it's gonna happen because Chad Gable, who helped Sami Zayn train for his WrestleMania match versus Gunther, just recently turned heel on Raw this past Monday in Sami Zayn's hometown of Montreal after Sami Zayn successfully defeated him in retaining his Intercontinental title. And Chad Gable viciously assaulted Sami Zayn in front of his family and in his home crowd after he shook hands and paid his respect to Sami Zayn after Sami Zayn defeated him. So it's looking like Chad Gable is going to be feuding with Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental title. And then Gunther, whenever he's ready to challenge for the Intercontinental title again, he's going to want to face Sami Zayn for that Intercontinental title whenever he gets a title shot. And I don't know, is Drew McIntyre going to be beating on jobbers to take out his frustrations of not being able to get back at CM Punk and him not being the number one contender for the World Heavyweight title? Y'all just got to tap into Raw to see what's going to be next for Drew McIntyre. Anyways, next, we saw a match with the Pride consisting of Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits taking on the Final Testament consisting of AOP and Karrion Kross. And this match had a special guest referee by the name of Bubba Ray Dudley. And Bubba Ray Dudley, because this match was competed under Extreme Rules and him being an ECW legend, that's why he was fitting to be the special guest referee for this match. And this match we saw B-Fab and Scarlett get involved as well, and them going through a table because when Scarlett tried to interfere on the behalf of the Final Testament, B-Fab, who was there on the behalf of the Pride, got involved, and that was a neutralizing factor there. And then we saw the Pride get the win, and this match was a time filler for WrestleMania 40 Day 2. And all these wrestlers, because they've worked hard, is why they were deserving of being featured at this year's WrestleMania. And I'll give this match a rating of a 3 out of a 5. It was a fast-paced, good back-and-forth action match we saw out of these two teams. And then the next match on the card we saw was LA Knight versus AJ Styles. Now, this was well built and this was well anticipated, and AJ Styles and LA Knight has been in somewhat of a feud after they were involved in that fatal four-way match at the Royal Rumble competing for the Undisputed Universal title. And then if y'all saw the Elimination Chamber, AJ Styles cost LA Knight a possible win during that Elimination Chamber match that LA Knight was competing in. And then that's why this feud was well built storyline wise. And LA Knight got the win. They picked the right winner to win this match. And it's a good look for LA Knight to get a win over on a veteran like AJ Styles, because LA Knight, he's been built as the fastest rising superstar in WWE history, and he's well liked by the crowd, and he's charismatic. He can talk and he can compete, and there's no other better wrestlers to make him look better with the momentum that he got going on right now than a guy like AJ Styles. And this match itself was a decent match as well. Good back and forth action, fast paced match, and LA Knight getting the win. And if y'all been tapping into SmackDown, you saw they've been having this elimination style match to determine who's going to be the number one contender for the undisputed Universal title. And at tonight's episode of SmackDown, I believe it's going to be LA Knight versus AJ Styles yet again to determine who's going to be the number one contender for the undisputed Universal title over there on SmackDown. And I don't know how the draft is going to play out, but this is leading to the next pay-per-view being Backlash. And I'll give this match between AJ Styles and LA Knight a rating of a 3 out of a 5. And this is a resume builder for LA Knight getting a win over on a guy like AJ Styles. And then the next match on the card was a triple threat match for the United States title. Logan Paul defending his U.S. title versus Randy Orton and Kevin Owens. One of the better matches that was featured at this year's WrestleMania. We saw good back and forth action, good pace of a match during this match for the U.S. title. And Logan Paul successfully retained his U.S. title, surprisingly, because I had thought that Logan Paul was going to drop the U.S. title, and I had thought that Kevin Owens was going to become the U.S. champion. At day one, we saw Sami Zayn have his WrestleMania moment as a singles competitor. Kevin Owens, who's been more successful as a singles wrestler when compared to Sami Zayn, and has had much more moments as a singles competitor than Sami Zayn. I thought Kevin Owens was going to have that similar moment as to what Sami Zayn had at day one of WrestleMania 40, but that wasn't the case because Logan Paul, as I said, successfully defended the U.S. title and retained it. And I had thought that because Logan Paul isn't a full-time active WWE wrestler, he doesn't defend his title on a regular SmackDown. He only shows up on pay-per-views, and this further legitimizes Logan Paul as a legitimate wrestler, and his ability to perform as a wrestler is without a shadow of a doubt. He can go as a wrestler, and he's got the clout, he's got the talking ability, he got the ability to draw because of his clout, and because he's not shy from playing a character and having fans involved with his feuds that he has. And with whatever Logan Paul gets featured at, he gets the crowd involved because his ability to talk, his charisma. And that's why I say Logan Paul is not comparing him to LA Knight, because LA Knight has strived to be a pro wrestler from his adulthood. Logan Paul, when he began his adulthood, he was a Vine star, and he set out to be a vlogger, not a pro wrestler. But now that he's impressed the pro wrestling world as a legitimate pro wrestler, not only just a pro wrestler, but a champion in the most notable pro wrestling company in the pro wrestling industry. And now that he got to win at WrestleMania and retain that U.S. title at WrestleMania versus a legend like Randy Orton and Kevin Owens, is more stamping his resume as a legitimate wrestler, which he's already surpassed, by the way, and his legacy as a pro wrestler is what that win had stamped Logan Paul as. And The match, as I said, I'll give the match itself a rating of a 3.5 out of a 5. And Logan Paul, he did his heel work. He hit both competitors that was involved in this match with his brass knuckles, that lucky punch, supported by the brass knuckles, but they would kick out at his pin attempts. And Logan Paul cheated in this match, of course, by using his brass knuckles to support his lucky punch, but he had his prime drink mascot, I Show Speed, another fellow vlogger that is well notable, and he got involved in this match and distracting the competitors and the referee, but Randy Orton took care of that by RKOing I Show Speed onto the announce table, and when it looked like there was going to be a new champion, Logan Paul snuck in and hit the splash and hit his finishing move to secure the win to retain the U.S. title. And then the next match on the card, we saw Io Sky defend her women's title versus Bayley, and Bayley got the win, as I had mentioned earlier in this video. And now Bayley finally gets to have her WrestleMania moment, which she never got to have. And Bayley was a part of revolutionizing women's wrestling during the Resurgence era. It was Bayley, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch that helped rejuvenate women's wrestling, not only in the WWE, but in all the pro wrestling. And Bayley got to have her moment at this year's Royal Rumble by, I believe, at a record setting in women's Royal Rumble history, being the #1 entrant, being the longest lasting women's wrestler to successfully win the Royal Rumble match. And this was well built as well, because Bayley, who founded the Damage Control group, helped introduce Io Sky and Dakota Kai, who was released from the WWE when they were a part of NXT, and when they got re-signed at the SummerSlam of 2021 after Becky Lynch defeated Bianca Belair for, was it the SmackDown or the Raw Women's title? I forgot what it was. But anyways, we saw after Becky Lynch won that title at SummerSlam, was it 2022 or 2021? I'm not too sure on the year. I believe it was 2021. Yeah, it was 2021. Sorry about the uncertainty there, because I had already talked about that being the SummerSlam of 2021 earlier in this video. And after Becky Lynch made her return, so did Bayley. And she came out with Io Sky and Dakota Kai being reinstated to the WWE instead of NXT this time, but to the main roster. And after Io Sky won the Money in the Bank last year and successfully cashed in her Money in the Bank briefcase to become the WWE Women's Champion, and Io Sky then took charge as the leader of Damage Control, because she was the champion, and Bayley was playing the more of the managerial role, the council role. And Io Sky had added Kairi Sane and Asuka to be a part of Damage Control, the Kabuki Warriors. She added those two new members to the Damage Control when originally it was just her and Bayley and Dakota Kai. Dakota Kai had no problem with it because she kept getting along with Io Sky and her leadership and had no problem with the new added members, the Kabuki Warriors, to Damage Control. Bayley felt like she was getting replaced by the Kabuki Warriors and losing Io Sky and the relationship that she had built with Io Sky, because Io Sky had added the Kabuki Warriors and was getting more close with the Kabuki Warriors than with Bayley. So the attention was going towards more the Kabuki Warriors and Dakota Kai and less to Bayley, and Io Sky not paying attention to what Bayley had to offer her. And that was frustrating Bayley. And Dakota Kai wasn't playing that much of a counselor role. She was playing as being one of the girls. And that's why Dakota Kai, during the build-up to this match, was telling Bayley that, oh, Io doesn't have interest in what Bayley got to say. And she told Dakota Kai to relay that news to Bayley. And it got to a point where Io Sky wouldn't even talk to Bayley, and she would get Dakota Kai to relay the news to Bayley. And when Bayley reached her breaking point after winning the Royal Rumble, it looked like Damage Control had the plans figured out. Bayley was going to challenge Rhea Ripley for the Women's World title, and Io Sky was going to go on to defend the WWE Women's title versus whomever. But then the Damage Control made the decision for Bayley, because Bayley asked Io Sky not about Io Sky's leadership, but why Io Sky was treating Bayley the way how Io Sky was treating Bayley according to Bayley's point of view. And then the Kabuki Warriors laid out Bayley, and then Dakota Kai looked like she was going to join forces with Bayley, but she did the double cross on Bayley and stayed with Damage Control and turned on Bayley. And Damage Control wasn't ringside for this match. It was one-on-one, Io Sky versus Bayley. And the match itself, with these two performers and their capability, they performed one heck of a match. And I'll give this match a rating of a 3.5 out of a 5. And Bayley got the win, as I said, after hitting the Rose Plant and getting the victory, becoming the new WWE Women's Champion. And I don't know why Damage Control wasn't ringside, because I wasn't really paying attention to the lead up to the road to WrestleMania, because that's why I haven't been making videos about wrestling, because if I don't find interest in it, I'm not going to be negative and start speaking about topics that I'm not interested in. And that's why I haven't been tapping in all the way about what's been going on to each and every storyline. I don't know, leading up to this match, if Damage Control was to be barred from ringside, or if because they lost at day one of WrestleMania, and that being the reason to why they couldn't be ringside accompanying Io Sky for her match versus Bayley. But Bayley got the win in a good match, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Bayley can produce as the WWE Women's Champion. And very deservingly so does Bayley deserve this WrestleMania moment and the championship, because she's been putting in work for a long time. And then the main event we saw under Bloodline rules, Roman Reigns defending the Undisputed Universal title versus Cody Rhodes. Now, I expected Cody Rhodes to win this match after he won this year's Royal Rumble. And because of the predictability that the WWE was putting out there by having Cody Rhodes win the Royal Rumble at this year's Royal Rumble, because y'all remember last year's Royal Rumble, Cody Rhodes, after returning from his injury from his feud with Seth Rollins, he came back at last year's Royal Rumble and won that. And then this year's Royal Rumble, he won it yet again. And thankfully for the WWE, because CM Punk had got injured, and a lot of people was expecting CM Punk to walk away as the winner of this year's Royal Rumble. And it was a toss-up between Cody Rhodes and CM Punk on who was going to win this year's Royal Rumble. And Cody Rhodes had won, and fortunately speaking for the WWE, because CM Punk had got injured during that match. If CM Punk would have won the Royal Rumble, they would have had to find a replacement to replace CM Punk's spot as the number one contender for the Universal title. And after Cody Rhodes had won, because of its predictability, I had lost interest in the main event scene with the WWE. And when they had brought The Rock to make things interesting for last year's WrestleMania's main event to be repeated, hence why I had said I was surprised that Cody Rhodes didn't win at last year's WrestleMania, but I understand the reason why the WWE had Roman Reigns go over on Cody Rhodes, because they wanted Roman Reigns to break records. And the only wrestlers that he trails behind as far as being the longest reigning WWE champion in history is Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan. I don't know if he surpassed Bob Backlund's reign as the longest reigning WWE champion in history. I gotta do a fact check on that. And Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes, that feud wouldn't have been interesting if it wasn't for The Rock being a part of the bloodline. And the feud that they were hinting for when The Rock was to come back to the WWE was him versus Roman Reigns. And it looked as if they were going to do that when Cody Rhodes announced that he's going to be stepping aside for The Rock to challenge Roman Reigns for the undisputed Universal title, cousin versus cousin, main eventing WrestleMania. If y'all saw the sitcom show called Young Rock, they teased that where a younger Rock and younger Roman Reigns are watching wrestling together, and they're saying to one another that they are going to wrestle one another one day. And then for that dream match to happen, Cody Rhodes was going to put his ego to the side and make that bloodline match happen with The Rock and Roman Reigns. But then it wasn't really Cody Rhodes, but as The Rock had put it, the Cody Rhodes crybabies, the wrestling smarks that was saying, but what about his story? He got cheated out of his WrestleMania moment when at WrestleMania 39 he got screwed out of that possible win. And that's how they sound, really. Because me personally, I wouldn't have mind seeing a babyface The Rock versus Roman Reigns, cousin versus cousin, a bloodline feud for the first time ever. I'm not talking about first time in-house feud in the bloodline with Roman Reigns taking on Jey Uso. I'm talking about a legend like The Rock versus a legend like Roman Reigns competing at WrestleMania, because that match itself is a main event field to main event WrestleMania. And that's why when they had first initially announced that, I was looking forward to it. The Rock versus Roman Reigns, they've been teasing this for a long time. But y'all saw the press conference that they had for WrestleMania, and Cody Rhodes, because he was listening to, I don't know if I'm going to say because he was listening to the fans, I'm just making sense of the build to this main event for WrestleMania 40. And Cody Rhodes, if he wasn't listening to the fans, it would have been a very egotistical thing of him for him to take back him doing the right thing and stepping aside for that main event to happen between The Rock and Roman Reigns for the undisputed Universal title. And you saw, like everybody else, Cody Rhodes come out during the press conference where The Rock and Roman Reigns was supposed to face off with one another, Here comes Cody Rhodes crying, talking about this is BS. Nobody should see this main event happen with The Rock, who's not even a full timer, and him getting a shot at the world title when he didn't win the Royal Rumble, and he just gets to skip the line and gets a challenge for the most prestigious title. And that's how it led to that tag team match for the main event for day one of WrestleMania 40. And I am not one of those crybabies that complain about The Rock versus Roman Reigns. They could have made a heck of a storyline out of that. But because the educated wrestling fans that are called the smarks, and I don't want to use that terminology to describe avid wrestling fans, and because I don't think people was complaining, but from where I'm coming from, I would have preferred to see that than to have last year's WrestleMania be repeated. But thankfully, the WWE knew what they was doing. They had The Rock take on this new gimmick of being the final boss. When The Rock was Hollywood Rock, or when The Rock was a part of the corporation as a wrestler, when he was a full-time wrestler in the prime of his career, he was a heel as a wrestler, not as a part of a board of the directors, because he had decided to work with TKO, the parenthood company of the WWE and the UFC, as a part of the board of directors for TKO. And that's how he took on this rejuvenating gimmick of the final boss. And we haven't seen The Rock be a heel for over 20 years. 21 years to be exact, because when The Rock was heel last, it was 2003 when he was closing that chapter of that book with him and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And after The Rock, got to, much like Cody Rhodes, got to finish that chapter with him getting a win over on Stone Cold Steve Austin, which he was never able to do at WrestleMania 17 and WrestleMania 15. And he finally got to do that in 2003 at WrestleMania 19, getting over that hump of never being able to defeat Stone Cold Steve Austin and him being a heel. It was all correlated. Not only did we get to see The Rock being heel again, and that was refreshing because it's been 21 years since we got to see The Rock do his heel work. And as I had said, that storyline aligns and it relates to one another, and it's almost coincidental to sort of say. And much like how Cody Rhodes couldn't defeat the Bloodline, he got to do that at the main event of day 2 of WrestleMania 40. This was the ultimate cliche, most typical feel-good storyline to end a book. And the match itself displayed that storyline factor. All the wrestlers that had fell victim to the Bloodline, including Cody Rhodes, multiple times. And I said this for the review of last year's WrestleMania, that there is no other wrestlers to dethrone Roman Reigns that is of a appropriate enough role other than Cody Rhodes. They could say CM Punk, whoever. If The Rock was to be a babyface and wrestle Roman Reigns, it would have just been to have Roman Reigns go over on The Rock, and to have a legend like The Rock under his resume of who he got to defeat and successfully defend his historical, undisputed, universal title reign. Almost to say a passing of the torch within the Bloodline. And if they were to say CM Punk or Seth Rollins is already a champion. We seen Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns feud with one another for years. They started together in the main roster of the WWE in the same group as The Shield. CM Punk just recently made his comeback to the WWE. Or in pro wrestling, if you really want to count his time with AEW. He stepped away from the pro wrestling industry to do other ventures for almost a decade. That's why I said, before these guys was even mentioned, Cody Rhodes was the appropriate candidate to dethrone Roman Reigns as to become the new undisputed Universal Champion. And we saw that at WrestleMania 40 in the most cliche, typical babyface fashion. And the match, because it was under bloodline stipulations, any and all things goes. And we saw, as expected, Jimmy Uso try and make interference on the behalf of the head of the table, his cousin Roman Reigns. And then came Jey Uso, his twin brother, to equal the playing field. And we saw Jey Uso take out Jimmy Uso by spearing him off of the stage. And then Solo Sikoa tries to make the save for the tribal chief. And then comes John Cena, who Solo Sikoa defeated in John Cena's last match at Crown Jewel in the most dominating fashion in Solo Sikoa's career. And in Solo Sikoa's young and up-and-coming career thus far, John Cena is the most impressive name that he got under his belt. And that is a resume factor to Solo Sikoa and the momentum that he's got going on right now. And John Cena came out to equal the playing fields. And see how that aligns right there? Jimmy and Jay aligning with one another because they had beef. And they had settled their beef at WrestleMania 40 the night earlier, the day before day 2. And they continued it by Jimmy Uso trying to make interference on the behalf of the bloodline, and Jey Uso, who got screwed over by the bloodline before for going against the bloodline and him deciding that he wants to equal out the playing field and give it a fair shot as to why he took out Jimmy Uso. And John Cena, who was defeated by Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns defeating John Cena and having John Cena's name under his resume as a guy, a legend that he defeated in his historical undisputed universal title reign. And then him having history with Solo Sikoa and the bloodline as well. And as I said, John Cena's last match was against Solo Sikoa at Crown Jewel. That's coincidental as well. And John Cena equaling out the playing fields by taking out Solo Sikoa to make things fair again. But then here comes the final boss, The Rock, the member of the board of directors of TKO/WWE. And The Undertaker out of nowhere comes out to take out The Rock to make the playing field equal. And then I believe Seth Rollins came out with the Shield costume and the Shield music and the Shield entrance. And Roman Reigns took him out. Seth Rollins couldn't get no offense in. And Seth Rollins was laid out. And The Rock and Roman Reigns, and it was all The Rock before The Undertaker came in and took The Rock out. And we saw Roman Reigns have the upper hand on Cody Rhodes. And it looked as if Roman Reigns was going to close in on yet another successful defense of his undisputed universal title. He had Cody Rhodes where he wanted him. But Seth Rollins, who was no threat, who was already laid out, was looking as if he was trying to get back up on his feet, struggling. Both Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. And Roman Reigns, when it looked like he was going to close the show, he was left with an ultimatum. Does he want to finish Cody Rhodes, or does he want to assault Seth Rollins, who's not even a part of this match, who was already taken out? If Roman Reigns would have focused and honed in on Cody Rhodes, he would have got the job done and retained the Undisputed Universal title. But because his overzealous resentment and the grudge that he holds deep within for Seth Rollins and the history that they share with one another, is why he made that crucial mistake of hitting Seth Rollins with the chair instead of Cody Rhodes. And it was almost deja vu. Matter of fact, it was deja vu from a decade ago, or over a decade ago, where we saw Seth Rollins, after the Shield successfully defeated the Evolution group, as in a passing of the torch to say the Shield is the new head group of the WWE. Then we saw Seth Rollins join the Authority with Triple H and Randy Orton and all the rest of the cronies of the Authority, when Seth Rollins betrayed Roman Reigns and the Shield with that same chair shot that Roman Reigns hit Seth Rollins with at WrestleMania 40. And the storytelling is amazing, because Seth Rollins coming out to the Shield's music, the Shield's entrance, and the Shield's costume, it reminded Roman Reigns of the Shield and Seth Rollins' betrayal to their brotherhood. And that sparked Roman Reigns of that story, and hence why Roman Reigns hit Seth Rollins in the back with that steel chair the same way how Seth Rollins hit Roman Reigns in the back with that same steel chair over 10 years ago. And then he assaulted Seth Rollins, and that's what gave the opportunity to Cody Rhodes to hit the crossroads onto Roman Reigns to finish the story, to sort of say, to become the new Undisputed Universal Champion. And I'll give this match a rating of 4.5 out of a 5. The best match I was featured on the card. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the WWE is going to do. Cody Rhodes, unlike Roman Reigns, is a full-time talent. And much like Seth Rollins was the workhorse as the World Heavyweight Champion, I'm expecting Cody Rhodes to be a workhorse champion, much like Seth Rollins was. And as for Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, both guys didn't show up to the Raw and SmackDowns after WrestleMania. And Seth Rollins has been battling injuries since last year. And Roman Reigns usually takes time off after WrestleMania. We probably won't see Roman Reigns until the summer. And as for Seth Rollins, probably the same thing as him. Will we see a feud between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins again? They have unfinished history from not only from the Shield, but y'all remember Royal Rumble of 2022. Roman Reigns assaulted Seth Rollins viciously and relentlessly with that same steel chair, with Seth Rollins wearing that same Shield costume, and they never got to finish that match for the Universal title at the Royal Rumble from 2 years ago. Will they continue that? And now that Tama Tonga is a part of the Bloodline, and Solo Sikoa has kicked out Jimmy Uso from the Bloodline because the Bloodline cannot afford weak links to be a part of the Bloodline. And Solo Sikoa told Paul Heyman that the Tribal Chief himself, the head of the table himself, Roman Reigns, had told Solo Sikoa to say there is no room for failure. And with Jimmy Uso losing to his twin brother at WrestleMania 40, and there's no room for losing for the bloodline. And because Jimmy Uso lost to his twin brother, he might as well join his twin brother in being out the bloodline, is what we saw on the last episode of SmackDown when Solo Sikoa had brought Tama Tonga, or it could have been a direct order from the tribal chief to introduce Tama Tonga as a new added facting member to the bloodline. And with Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga assaulting Jimmy Uso and taking him out the bloodline, and we saw that it was certain because Paul Heyman tried to make a call to reach out to the head of the table to see if this was the right move, and Solo made Paul Heyman know that it was the right move by slapping the phone out of Paul Heyman's hand and obliterating Paul Heyman's phone. Now we're going to see what the bloodline is going to do if Roman Reigns is going to help work this new bloodline thing out with Tama Tonga being a part of the bloodline with Solo Sikoa. Now that is a vicious duo of a tag team right there. Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa with Paul Heyman's accompanying being managers to them. And if Jacob Fatu, who's the cousin to Roman Reigns and the brother of the Usos and Solo Sikoa, who recently signed with the WWE, imagine that trio: Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Solo Sikoa. That trio, even without Roman Reigns, is a deadly trio, and that is a rejuvenating new look to the bloodline. And if Roman Reigns decides to come back and decides to be the leader to the bloodline and helping lead the trio of Jacob Fatu, Solo Sikoa, and Tama Tonga with Paul Heyman's managerial company, then that bloodline right there is stronger than ever. And depending on how this year's draft goes, will Tama Tonga and Solo Sikoa, when Jimmy Uso can come back, will they feud with the Usos? That would be an interesting feud. And then, we don't know when Jacob Fatu will make his debut. That's why I'm looking forward to seeing what the WWE is going to be able to produce with the bloodline. And that does it for this episode of Talk Wrestling. That's my review for WrestleMania 40. And subscribe to this channel for more content. Like this video, share this video if y'all want. Click the links in the description to show y'all support for this channel. Any and all things will be appreciated. And I'm out of here, y'all. Be good. Peace.